Today there will be 5 main things that I'm focusing on. These are my love for early 2000s or Y2K style and fashion and how it evolved in today's society, which will lead me into both the history behind this fashion and how these fashion statements have impacted us. Next, I will talk about some artists and the impacts that they have had on the early 2000s fashion statement, and finally, I will show and explain my final outcome as a way of concluding my project. I chose this topic because I've always loved the cultural society and overall aesthetic of the early 2000s. This era had such a unique sense of style, from bold fashion choices like bright, colorful outfits, to very famous pop culture icons like Beyoncé, Destiny's Child, Queen Latifah, and the TLC Girls, and a whole bunch more that hold with the generation. What carries me the most is the representation of cultural revolution that has evolved and influenced today's society. The sudden change in trends with clothing from modern to casual, athleisure, business formal, and streetwear. Even though these societies are dramatically different, the early 2000s fashion seemed to evolve into our day-to-day lives. My overreaching question is, how did the oversized luxury street aesthetic of hip-hop's golden age, preferably from 1980s to early 2000s, enter the mainstream and straddle the line between cultural appreciation and appropriation? What is appreciation and appropriation? When going into my research, I found that cultural appropriation and appreciation came up a lot, but I didn't really understand the terms or the meanings. According to Britannica, which is one of the most well-established general knowledge references, and their work is checked by highly educated editors, says, the term cultural appropriation was first used in academic spaces to discuss issues such as colonism and the relationships between majority and minority groups. This quote highlights the idea of cultural appropriation and how it shows the power imbalances between groups. To get into more details, looking further into appropriation, Britannica talks about how appropriation took place, as well as how the majority have been adopting cultural elements as a minority group in the exploitive, disrespectful, or stereotypical way. Edward Burnett Taylor was an English anthropologist and best known for defining culture abroad, says, culture is the complex whole which includes knowledge, beliefs, arts, morals, laws, customs, and any other capabilities and habits acquired by man as a member of a society. This quote emphasizes that culture is a comprehensive collection of habits and ways of thinking that individuals learn and acquire. By calling culture a complex whole, Burnett Taylor focuses attention on how culture is learned. To give an example, appreciating a culture could be to collaborate with Black artists or to represent culture respectfully. And appropriation would look like mimicking or copying Black styles, for instance, Black hairstyles like box braids, locks, African-inspired prints, or even Black church hats. People are using and getting these things as not appropriation, but more of when they strip the cultural meaning behind it, like using it for publicity or social media. Appropriation is something being taken without understanding the culture or crediting it behind it. According to the Black Girl Times BGX blog, which is a nonprofit organization that specializes in cultural, social, and political contexts of Black girls and women, says, dating back to the 1960s to 1970s, fashion had made a huge impact and powerful role in the civil rights movement. During protests, activists started wearing their Sunday best, polished slacks, beautiful dresses, and neatly pressed shirts. They wore this not only to look respectable, but to make a statement. Their appearance challenged the racist narrative that painted Black people as unkept or lesser than. This quote emphasizes how ordinary decisions such as what to wear became such a part of a larger equality movement. In an era when Black identity was being attacked, it reframed fashion as a powerful act of self-definition, showing that was also a part of the fight for equality. The choice to wear these nice Sunday best clothes during these marches and protests reflected pride and discipline. With this, their choices countered the racist stereotypes on Black African Americans that depicted them as uncivilized. By presenting themselves with this change of only their clothing, activists demanded respect in a society that tried to deny it. Fashion and design is meant to be creative and to show perspectives, but reality reveals a different story. Let's examine the current demographics of fashion in the industry of the United States. According to Source Mythology, is a design census survey conducted by the AIGA says 63% of designers in the U.S. are white, 11% are Asian and Hispanic/Latinx, and only 7% are Black or African American. This quote reveals the racial disparities within the United States fashion and design industry. demonstrating that majority of the designs field is represented by white professionals, while Black African American designers are faced with underrepresentation at 7%. This data evaluates the current state of diversity, equity, and the inclusion, or DEI, with this profession in the United States. Trying to understand how Black fashion trends have been embraced by the mainstream fashion industry led me down many different paths. This included seeing people and their stories based on cultural appropriation in the fashion industry. I looked at people like Dapper Dan, the Harlem's fashion designer, Naomi Sims, the groundbreaking American Black model and businesswoman, and Kirby Jean Raymond, who was the Haitian founder and director of the menswear label Prior Moss. These people represent a powerful and often undermined narrative with African American fashion history. They collectively redefine industry standards and use their platforms not just for clout or publicity, but to build a story and to voice their opinions about this topic. The Fashion Studies Journal, created by Ricky Bird, who has a PhD in Black Studies, talks about Black designers who have attempted to escape race to signify their talent and/or have used their culture as a branding strategy as a form of protest. Naomi Sims states, "We are going to have to fight harder for the recognition in the next 10 years than we ever had in the 70s. There is still no great fashion house ran by any Black designers." This states how Black designers have achieved success but not been given their power. In this slide, you can see Dapper Dan. Dan was a designer in the 80s who created a style mainly for Black people. He created jumpsuits, jackets, slacks, and more. His clothing had multiple different prints of brands and logos. He created these not only to start something different for himself, but as well to be able to put out a product that people couldn't afford designer brands, but still wanted to feel the luxury of being able to wear the logos. Later on, during the 90s, Dapper Dan got raided for using both Louis Vuitton's and Gucci's logos. According to the VCU News, which is a public research university including official university publications, after these events had taken place, Gucci made a jacket that looked identical to the one Dapper Dan created in the 90s. Gucci was called out on social media for stealing Dapper Dan's idea. Not only did these actions take place, but later on, Gucci had reached out to Dan and asked him to work for them. And under certain circumstances and conditions, he took this offer. Given this information, doesn't this mean Dapper Dan appropriated his artwork? And the answer is yes, because Dapper Dan did use luxury brand logos without permission. Technically and legally, it's a form of appropriation. But not all seem to agree. In the WNYC, which is the New York Public Radio, Khalif Sano, a staff writer for the New Yorkers, commented on his opinion about Dapper Dan. Quote, "There is a real tension in hip-hop, and I think it's most creatives feels between wanting to pay homage to the great, authentic stuff of the past and wanting to create something new. And for a while, when Dapper Dan is making these jackets, in a way, he's doing both at once. He's building you a jacket that doesn't look like anything that Gucci would make, doesn't look like anything that would come from the Gucci store, and so in a sense, it's both right. It's new because of the way he built it, but it somehow seems to be a part of this lineage of old European luxury, even though it's not legally related to the European companies." This quote shows the tension between homage and innovation and how some people see Dan's work honoring the old European luxury aesthetic. In a way, Dapper Dan renews it by creating garments that are completely like no other original brand products. Willie Smith was a popular designer behind the women's wear line Willie Wear. According to the Fashion History, which this page was written by Eleanor Boholt, who is a presidential scholar and fashion designer major at the Fashion Institute of Technology, or more known as FIT, says Smith was known for his initiative blend of newly emerging concept of streetwear with high fashion. He was the youngest designer to ever be nominated for the Coty Award in 1971, which is an American award sponsored by Coty Cosmetics Company and selected by America's first fashion critics. He also won the Coty American Fashion Critics Award for women's fashion in 1983. Willie Smith's fashion journey began in Philadelphia, where he studied at the Philadelphia College of Arts. He later received a scholarship to attend a school in New York called Parsons School of Design. But before he left, he didn't receive a fashion degree, making it harder for him to dive straight into the professional industry. Afterwards, his astonishing skill led him to work with Arnold Sacassi. Sacassi was a Canadian fashion designer who created gowns for First Ladies Mamie Eisenhower, Barbara Bush, Hillary Clinton, and Laura Bush. Later on, his close friends, Lauret Mallet, founded the Willie Wear brand in 1976. Willie Smith's clothing is a perfect example of modern hip-hop fashion. With Smith rejecting high fashion, he called his work street culture because the design of his clothing for people on the street, but people who couldn't afford the major brands but wanted to wear the new trends, artists, dancers, and people in the New York community. Y2K hip-hop fashion, especially for dancers and b-boys, often known as breakdancers, often wore these clothing that allowed them to do these things. This led things into the style we now know, the baggy, oversized clothing, which Willie Smith was making. My ultimate objective, I wanted to be able to embrace an outcome that truly captured and embodied the energy from early 2000s fashion. This involved creating a mix of all people's fashion styles and aesthetic that I looked into when researching my topic. Not only looking into just some designers' work, but also looking at stylists and people who modeled or wore the outfits themselves. My original plan was to create a sketch-out design inspired by some artists I researched throughout my capstone, taking some of the work and embracing it through what the world thinks early 2000s fashion is today. I created two designs. The one on the left is the one based on Dapper Dan, and then the one on the right is the one based on Willie Smith, which are two of the people that I discussed earlier. But even with this, I felt like I needed something more and something more impactful. St. Johnsbury Academy has 3 fashion classes. These are Fashions 1, 2, and Advanced Fashion. Fashion 2 and Advanced Fashion every year creates a design for our annual fashion show that is presented in this exact place. Students spend an entire semester creating these designs for this one day. My capstone project is based on early 2000s fashion, but for my outcome, I wanted to embrace the knowledge of what appreciation and appropriation is in the fashion industry. In these classes, knowing the difference between appreciation and appropriation in a fashion class is significantly meaningful for any student wanting to pursue a career in the fashion industry. This could later bring out responsible designers who are willing to collaborate to ensure fair compensation and creative control. Getting this knowledge and education, these students would help move away from fast fashion brands and knockoff brands like Shein, H&M, Fashion Nova, and Zara, and move them towards supporting brands that credit the source and cultural elements. With that, I'm currently creating a denser version of this slideshow based only upon appreciation and appropriation with the first Fashion 1 class. I'm putting the majority of the information that I'm currently using and adding additional improvements to it as well. I want the slideshow to contain all the information so that the students understand the differences, but to also keep the attention and overall fun with the class that the class brings. This slideshow will hopefully bring a change of thought, especially when it comes down to the brands that they buy clothing from and the work that they use to get the ideas for the fashion show. Oh, my fault. This project originally started with me exploring the Y2K fashion, then examining cultural appreciation versus appropriation. Moving forward, I highlighted the Black pioneers like Dapper Dan and Willie Smith and spoke upon racial disparities in the fashion industry. My hope is that this will educate and inspire the next generation of designers to create an industry that is ethical and respectful of its cultural roots. These are my sources. Thank you. Do you have any questions?
Great job, Brooke. Do you think cultural appropriation is always intentional?
I would say no. So like one of the people I looked into, like I spoke upon was Dapper Dan. So his artwork was like he created his work for like Black people so that they were able to like wear these luxury brands, but like without having to pay the price for it. So he wasn't trying to like appropriate Louis Vuitton or Gucci, but he just wanted to put something out there for people who could afford it.
Okay, so, so there's like a slide in your presentation about like the percentage of fashion designers, and like 70, 60 something is like white, like 11% is like Latino something, and 7% is Black. I couldn't help but notice like 20% was missing from that graph because it didn't really add up to 100%. I wonder I don't know what that's about. I just was interested.
So the other percentage that was taken out was a different race, but when I was looking into it, when I researched it, the graph only gave me those percentages. But looking into it, I believe it was another race, and I'm just not too sure which race that was.
Why did you choose to focus so much on Black designers in the culture?
Well, many fashion trends have been oriented by Black communities, but they normally they don't get the credit for it. So it just shows how appropriation and appreciation is such a major factor between the fashion industry.
Hey, Brooke, can you go back 2 slides? I have a question for you. So, is this from our shows or?
Yeah.
So, top left and top right. Can you take us through, do you consider those appreciation or appropriation?
The
Top left and top right.
Yeah, okay, so I feel like that's, so the designer was the girl in the middle, her name was Emily. So I know she designed the clothes based off the Dune movie that was made. I'm not too sure how I would put that. I'm just interested in your research. I would say because it was used for good measures, and it wasn't overextended or just used for social media. Our fashion class that we did last year in the fashion show was based on futurism, which the Dune movie was presented in. So I wouldn't say that was those pictures or their outfits were appropriation.
What was something that you struggled with when you were researching this?
So originally my topic was just how did fashion embrace the mainstream fashion trends, and how did Black communities help with that. But originally finding the difference between designers and stylists was probably one of the harder things for me to do. But once I figured those out and finding the differences, it was easier for me to find designers to talk about.
Why do you think that the 2000s fashion trends are still popular today?
Well, I feel like fashion is history always repeats itself. So I feel like new brands and old brands always come back again. And people just seem to really like the 2000s fashion trend, and it's still being worn today, so.
Do you think that there are enough encouragement within the fashion classes here at the Academy to research and understand the cultures behind the designs that the students make before they create the designs and actually make the clothing, or do you think that should be more encouraged?
So last year I was in the Fashion 2 class, so I did make a design for the fashion show, and I do know that we had to create mood boards and how to look up more information behind what our designs was. We also do a really big opening about how to think about the theme and different ways to present it. So I do feel as if that the class does help you make sure your work isn't being appropriated and that you take it in serious consideration.
Okay, Brooke, if nobody else is going to ask, can you take us through the controversy over Dapper Dan versus Gucci a little bit more?
Yeah. Okay, so basically when Dapper Dan originally started his artwork and his designs, he created a lot of designs with Gucci and Louis Vuitton's logos, and he had it printed all over his clothing. So not something that Gucci or Louis Vuitton would normally do, but it was something different and something that he wanted to embrace, as well as it being a lot cheaper than what the brands actually produced out. And so with that, later on, he did get raided, meaning that he had to completely stop his brand because it wasn't his logos that was being presented. And then later on through that, Gucci did recreate one of the designs that he made, and it was a jacket that he presented, and the jacket that Gucci remade was like the exact same as the one Dapper Dan presented, making it so that Gucci got like a whole bunch of like bad publicity on it, like through social media. And then later on through that, Gucci had asked Dan to come back and work for him, and with some certain circumstances, Dan like accepted it and now is working for Gucci again.